everybody's here. It's like a party, no? Yes, maybe. I don't know. Let's get started, okay? Come on! Welcome back to the laboratory. As before, all you have to do is pick and click.
Wheel. Dinosaur.
The word dinosaur comes from the Greeks. It means terrible lizard, and it refers to the large extinct reptiles that used to live here on the Earth 230 to 65 million years ago. If you're a dinosaur, you didn't think you were terrible. You probably thought you were pretty cool. Just because the name terrible lizard means dinosaur doesn't mean that dinosaurs weren't a lot like people.
That might be a new theory, Professor.
You know, there were all sizes of dinosaurs. Big ones and little ones. Some that ran and some that walked. And some that were mean and some that not too mean at all. Well, okay, they were all pretty mean, but they didn't all eat other creatures.
That's true. Some just ate plants. In fact, the plant eaters were the largest dinosaurs.
Well, so much for the theory that eating salads can help you lose weight.
We know that the last dinosaurs died out 65 million years ago. They ruled the world for more than 160 million years.
160 million years? That is a very long time, especially when you consider that human fossils have only been around for 3.8 million years.
The first dinosaur remains to be discovered consisted of a few teeth and bones. They were found in Sussex, England in 1822.
Some of the earliest findings were actually believed by people to be monsters and demons. Tell them about that, Q.
Some ancient people thought that the enormous fossil bones they stumbled upon were the remains of dragons and giants. As late as 1725, one German scientist thought that he had proven the existence of Noah's Ark and the Great Flood with a fossil he had been studying.
He suggested that the fossil had come from the skeleton of a person who had drowned in the Great Flood.
Later, that fossil proved to be the remains of a giant salamander.
A giant salamander!
Smallest dinosaur.
Contrary to how we usually think of them, not all dinosaurs were huge. In fact, some were no larger than a chicken. A dinosaur Compsognathus, for example, was only 29.5 inches long and weighed just 15 pounds. Here, boy!
Largest dinosaur.
The first dinosaurs were small and lightly built, but over millions of years they grew to colossal sizes. Some dinosaurs were so big they could have eaten dinner from the roof of a 3-story building.
Plant-eating dinosaurs were the largest, reaching up to 100 feet in length and weighing up to 160,000 pounds. The meat-eaters tended to be smaller and ran on their hind legs.
The largest dinosaurs of all belonged to the family of sauropods. They were the big, long-necked, plant-eating dinosaurs like Apatosaurus and Plesiosaurus. Just to say that makes my throat itch. Plesiosaurus. Plesiosaurus. Cube, get me some water.
Right away, Professor.
Boy, sometimes you gotta drink. As a matter of fact, all times, you should have 8 glasses of water a day.
Fiercest dinosaur.
Tyrannosaurus rex was the last of the carnivores. He's generally thought to be the most ferocious of all the dinosaurs. I think both his bark and his bite was pretty mean.
Although he wasn't the biggest of the dinosaurs, T-Rex was an average of 50 feet long and 18 feet high.
That means if he were to come up to your house, his knee would be in line with your first floor window. Tyrannosaurus rex had an enormous 5-foot-long head and extremely powerful jaws with sharp teeth the size of heavy butcher knives.
If he'd been alive when humans were around, he could probably have swallowed one of them whole.
Here's a multiple choice question. What's another word for meat eating? Is it A, biff, B, stewy, or C, carnivorous?
Fossil.
A fossil is any trace of a plant or an animal that has somehow been preserved in time.
Some of the oldest fossils that can be seen with the naked eye date back 3.5 billion years. They are the remains of one-cell algae called stromatolites.
If you were having a birthday party for a stromatolite, it would be 3.5 billion candles on the cake. So I hope he blows it out soon, because it's getting hot in here.
Fossils provide us with an evolutionary record of life on Earth. Although life did exist even before the oldest fossils, the organisms were soft-bodied and did not leave much in terms of imprints or remains.
It wasn't until the Paleozoic era, which was 570 million years ago, that creatures with skeletal parts and hard shells began to emerge. It was only then when we could find fossils because there was something substantial to remain that we could find later.
A fossil can be a piece of bone, wood, or other material that has been replaced, atom, by minerals. It can also be a natural mold or cast of an organism, the imprint of an ancient creature, or an insect that has been trapped in the resin of a tree called amber.
Plant fossil.
Although plants decay, they leave behind a trace of carbon, the element symbolized by C. When lots of leaves pile up and push down on one another for millions of years, we get coal, which, as you know, can keep you warm in the winter or draw a mustache on your sister.
Insect fossil.
Some of the most complete fossils ever discovered are the little insect bodies that have been preserved in resin from trees or amber.
One fossilized species of insect is related to the modern dragonfly. It has a wingspread of more than 2 feet.
The earliest known insect fossils are 400 million years ago. They were little wingless bugs that were found in the Devonian period.
Fish fossil.
About 700 million years ago, the first multicellular animals appeared in the sea. They were creatures without backbones, like worms and jellyfish. Then, about 500 million years ago, new animals populated the oceans.
These animals didn't have jaws or fins, but they did have backbones, which made them the first vertebrates. They are the ancestors of today's fish, and we know about them because of their fossil remains.
Tooth bone fossil.
The tooth of a Tyrannosaurus rex measures up to 7 inches long. If you found one of these, you could use it for a ruler if you didn't want to measure more than 7 inches.
Under most conditions, the soft tissue of an animal rots away, leaving behind the bones and teeth, which can then be preserved under the right conditions. Paleontologists spend long hours carefully removing the bones from Earth so that they can be reassembled to teach us about the past.
In places where it's very cold, sometimes they find animals that are frozen in ice. These are the most well-preserved of all the fossils. And sometimes, if they cut open the stomach, they find that there are still things inside. Ugh, disgusting. What's that, a peach? In the early Renaissance, during the 1300s, people actually thought that fossils were here on Earth because Satan the devil was trying to trick them. But there were too many smart people to go for such hooky-pooky.
That's right, Professor. When Leonardo da Vinci found marine fossils on top of some mountain, he determined that those mountains must have been submerged underwater at one time in the past. As early as the late 1600s, the British scientist Robert Hooke recognized that fossils were the remains of living creatures. He also saw that these creatures were different from the ones that were alive in his day.
But the true nature of fossils was not largely understood until the late 1800s. At this time, geologists began to theorize that maybe the Earth had been around for a lot longer than we had thought. Aha! Maybe even long enough for many different forms of life to have lived, and for some of them to have become extinct. Bye-bye. So, you see, like everything in science, it was discovery after discovery after discovery that we came to understand the true nature of fossils.
Fossil. Jurassic period. Cretaceous period.
The Jurassic period began about 208 million years ago and ended about 144 million years ago. The most noticeable thing about this time period was that the dinosaurs started to get very big and the first bird-like creatures began to appear.
Also, the supercontinent Pangaea continued to break apart and began forming the continents which we're familiar with today.
Move your cursor around the landscape and click on what interests you. Archaeopteryx were the first known birds. They were feathered and had hollowed bones like modern birds, but their skeletal features, including teeth, were reptilian. Plesiosaurus were about 75 feet long and weighed nearly 80 tons. They may have stood on their hind legs to feed on the highest tree leaves. Stegosaurus, 2-ton vegetarian reptiles, were one of the only dinosaurs with bony backplates. They probably had few, if any, predators. Apatosaurus were large reptiles related to the saurischians that must have fed continuously to supply their massive bodies with food. Plesiosaurs were long-necked sea reptiles that literally flew through the water in search of prey. Mythical creatures such as the Loch Ness Monster may be based on the remains of Plesiosaurs. Compsognathus were one of the smallest known carnivorous dinosaurs. They were about 60 centimeters long and weighed only about 6.5 pounds. Ornitholestes were only about 7 feet in length. Relatively small but fast and agile, it's believed that these animals may have robbed eggs from their larger relatives. Oysters are bivalve mollusks which can be found in great numbers within sedimentary deposits. Amblotherium were small primitive mammals. They had a large number of teeth designed to devour a variety of insects. Belemnites showed no traces of an external skeleton or shell. Like their relatives the squid, the belemnites expelled ink-like clouds to confuse their enemies. Pagucus were 1 1/4-inch hermit crabs with well-developed pincers designed to scavenge the bottom of shallow seas. This encyclopedia cross-references all the information within this title. There are several different ways to find information. If you click the Category button, a list will appear of all available categories. You can either use your mouse to scroll through the list or enter a letter to jump to a specific section. If you select a category, all topics related to that category will appear. Simply select the topic and the information will appear in the reference window. You can also click the word search button and type in the word that you are looking for. The encyclopedia will automatically find the topics that contain either that word or a word with the closest spelling. Select a topic which contains that word, and again, the information will appear in the reference window. By selecting the Copy button, you can copy information into a Windows clipboard. This will allow you to paste the information to another document. You can also print out the information by selecting the Print button. Cretaceous period.
The Cretaceous period began 144 million years ago and ended 66 million years ago. The continents continued to drift apart and became more recognizable as the continents that we live on today. At the end of the Cretaceous period, I am sad to say, a mass extinction took place. This marked the end of the Mesozoic era.
Some of the biggest dinosaurs came and went during this period.
Move your cursor around the landscape and click on what interests you. Pterodactylus, with their 12-inch long wingspan, were small toothed reptiles that caught their insect prey in flight. Iguanodons were plant-eating animals with a unique bite. Instead of teeth, they had a horny covering in the front of their mouths, ideally suited for cropping leaves and small branches. Sauropelta were 17-foot-long vegetarian reptiles with protective spikes and a deadly tail. The Hypsilophodon were long-legged, swift, and agile. They were similar in appearance to a young iguanodon. Tyrannosaurus rex were the most ferocious predators in existence. T-Rex was over 40 feet in length with 6-inch long razor-sharp teeth. They dominated the Earth for as long as 20 million years. Parasaurolophus were duck-billed dinosaurs distinctive for their large hollow crest that may have served to produce resonant oboe-like sounds. Saltosaurus were 40-foot-tall reptiles. They were covered with hundreds of pea-sized bones tightly packed into their skin. These bones, along with a few oval plates, protected them from predators' sharp claws. Torosaurus were ceratopsian dinosaurs, although not as common as their better-known cousin, Triceratops. Kronosaurus were large pliosaurs measuring nearly 30 feet in length. Their heads were twice that of a T-Rex, bearing twice as many teeth. Sea turtles, since their origin in the Triassic period, are the most heavily armored animals to ever live. Early mammals were small and rodent or shrew-like. Some were vegetarians, while others ate small insects, grubs, or worms. Snakes first appeared during the Cretaceous period. They, like dinosaurs, lay soft eggs on land. Velociraptors were somewhat small, vicious predators. It's believed they hunted in packs and disemboweled their victims with their knife-like nails. Plesiosaurus were bizarre ammonoid cephalopods that lasted only a short time before becoming extinct. Exit.